Okay, so I'm trying to illustrate this idea that I have about temptation coming from outside of ourselves. Okay, and how ridiculous it is that we fall into temptation and we fall short of the highest version of ourselves, because I'm new on my own personal spiritual journey with God, okay? And like I've had, a fundamental understanding of God, and now I'm working on a belief with God and a relationship. And I'm getting to understand the whole, good versus evil, the temptation coming from outside of myself, that kind of thing. Okay. And I'm thinking of this scenario. I'm trying to illustrate the scenario, so I'm going to try to do it now, right? Because I don't think the temptation to be a lower version of myself comes from me, right? I'm solid in the desire to be the highest, most quality fucking me possible. The most quality. I'm committed to that. There's nothing in me that wants to be a lesser version of myself. Nothing. Okay? There's nothing in me that wants to make a decision that's going to set my goals back a week or a month or a year. There's nothing in me that wants to destroy what I've built and burn it to the ground. There's nothing in me that wants that. And therefore, if it's not in me, it must be coming from something else. Okay? And if it's coming from something else, then how is it we fall short of that all the time, right? Like for me right now, it's the food. I was on my way back from a concrete job. I'm thinking, and in my mind I go, let's stop and grab some cheesecake. Okay? And I'm like, starting to consider that. Right? Now let's say for a second that negative energy, we'll call it the adversary, is real. And that adversary wants me to drift and be a low energy, low level piece of shit. A low version of me. A no goal setting, non-winning just a turd. Right? Waste my life in mediocrity. Let's say that adversary wants that for me. And it knows that every time I fall short of my goals, I become a little more weak and I trust myself a little less. Right? I solidify this idea that I can't. Right? I prove to myself that I'm not the one, that I'm not one of the real ones. Okay? Now let's put this in a scenario that we can see, we can stand back and watch, right? Because imagine, if you will, that the adversary whispers these things into our thoughts. Stop and get some cheesecake. Hey, go have a drink. Put your foot to the pedal. Yell. Whatever it is, right? Maybe get some dope. Go gamble. And insert vice here. Whatever that fucking vice is. Okay? Now let's step back and let's imagine that we can see that motherfucker whispering it into our ear. Right? If you had some low fucking level turd coming and telling you to go be a lower version of yourself, hey, why don't you go be a piece of shit? You'd tell it to go fuck itself. See, fuck you, man. No. Hey, why don't you go eat a piece of cheesecake and sit in your truck and fucking hope that nobody sees you eating it, because you're trying to build this reputation. It's not about you know what I mean? So imagine you have this friend, and this friend gets into a relationship, and at first it's pretty, there's some warning signs or whatever, but at first it's pretty mellow, not really hurting anything. But then slowly but surely your friend disappears, and you go over to see him one time and he looks like shit. Skinny, pale, seems frightened. A mere, shadow of his previous self. And you go, what's going on? And his new girlfriend leans over, whispers in his ear, tell him nothing. And he looks at you and he says nothing. Okay. Well, hey, I've been thinking about you. Let's go. What do you say we go to a movie or something? And she leans over again and she says in his ear, tell him no. And you're watching her fucking do this. You're watching her tell him to tell you no. And he looks up and he goes, no. And for every question and every scenario you put out there, she leans over and she tells him the answer to answer, and he answers that answer. You would agree that that's a fucked up situation, right? And so temptation to do wrong is sort of in that same vein, right? Here I am with absolute desire to be the highest version of myself, committed 100% to that goal, to that lifestyle, all the time. There's nothing in me that makes me want to be less of myself or not meet my goals or not grow. There's nothing in me that wants that. There's nothing in me that wants anything other than the very best for myself. Everything in me wants the best for me. And I set goals based on what I think is the best for me. And I live a life in line with what is the best for me. And so for me to step back and see where that temptation comes from, what an eye-opener. Understanding that temptation doesn't come from me. It comes from a negative spirit, a negative thought, a darkness, an adversary that wants me separated from the people that love me so that I can end up and die alone. So think about that. Every time you're tempted, remember that that's not from you. It's a low-level piece of shit trying to get you to be a lower version of yourself so that it can fucking own you. So that it can own you. So that you can waste your life not doing a fucking thing. Right? So that you can waste your life living in fear, living in doubt, living in uncertainty, and end up dying alone. And everybody's out there just, what happened? What the fuck happened? What happened? Why? Why did that one fail? We fail because we think that those negative things come from inside of us. We think that those temptations don't. When we cave, we think that they don't matter and that we can make it up tomorrow. We think when we fall short of the highest version of ourselves, we can make it up. We don't see that it's setting us back a day, a week, a month, a year, 6 years. How much further would we all be if we would have stopped caving to temptation 6 years ago? 6 days ago? 6 minutes ago? Stand back and watch how the temptation to be a lower version of you is not of you. Yeah.